N.O.B. Vote no.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to pass as almost a serious comment from me on the Swampy's Wham channel. It's basically to do with the upcoming election on the 12th of December. What I'm asking you to do is vote N.O.B. That stands for none of the above. But let me explain that. Let's just dive in. I'll tell you a bit about me first, so you know where I'm coming from politically. Basically left wing all my life. I was a member of the Labour Party at the same time as being a member of Militant and being kicked out of the Labour Party because of that. I've since developed into what you might call an anarchist. I'm also a veggie and an atheist. I've been around a bit as far as the job market is concerned. Up and down more often than a nose draws. I worked at McDonald's. That was my first job. That was a lot of people. I was the first breakfast manager outside of London in the UK. Worked in management, in credit and debt collection. 18 months with the Staffordshire Police. That was enough. 13 years with the West Midlands Fire Service. That was enough. I've also been a driving instructor and an HGV driver for about 15 years now. And I've done a few other part-time jobs in between. So I've been about a bit. What I'd like to say is that we don't have a democracy. It's not a democracy here. You might think it is, but it's not. The system's rigged. And before I explain it, let me just go through the main players in this election. And at the top of the list are my favourites, the Conservatives. My favourites should have been dripping with sarcasm there. I just loathe them. There's a reason the phrase compassionate conservatism exists. That's because most of the time, for the vast majority of people who are conservatives, they haven't got any compassion, they've got no empathy, and they're just psychopathic parasites. If you earn less than £100,000 a year, probably even less than that, if you vote for Conservatives, you're voting against your own interests. All the time. And it's always been that. It's always been that way. You cannot vote for anybody that's Conservative and expect to have your interests represented. Let's have a look at this leaflet that came through my door the other day. I've been living here 14 years and not one political candidate has ever knocked this door. This is our local MP. I'll just read off the front. They're going to give $33.9 billion for the NHS, 20,000 extra police, and more funding for every pupil in every school. It's just total bollocks. It really is. All of the promises that these people come out with are bollocks. That's all of them, not just the Conservatives. They play on what they think is important to you, and they've been in power for 10 years. Don't you think they could have fixed these things by now? They're always banging on about law and order, and there is none. There is no law and order. The police just keep a lid on it. The only time you see a load of police is when there's like old age pensioners stopping the traffic because they're objecting to having their pensions robbed by Conservatives. And then there's 1 million police. They're supposed to be the party of money management. It's absolute crap. The only money that they manage is theirs. This country is in more debt than it's ever been, and they've been in power for 10 years and they've put most of that debt there. Lib Dems. Now, their colour is yellow, and it's a reason they're yellow. It's because they went into coalition with the Conservatives when Cameron was in power, and that was the only reason he was in power, is because they were prepared to sell their grannies in an act of monumental cowardice and sell off everything that they stood for. They stood for absolutely nothing. And hopefully they'll get obliterated at this election as well. That was the only reason the Conservatives were in power the first time round. And the only reason they've got any sort of majority this time is because they bribed the Democratic Unionist Party. 10 MPs just to get some sort of majority. The Greens, well, I'm sort of green, I suppose. But they're just coming across as total loonies and they're not going to do anything. Corbyn, Labour Party, is the only one who has got anywhere near any form of sincerity. But he's not going to go anywhere. Even if he had a landslide, he will not be allowed to do any sort of social policies that would be of benefit to the majority of people in this country. Because the powers that shouldn't be are behind the MPs. The MPs have got no power. And the main subject of this election is Brexit. Brexit occurred for two main reasons. A, totally uncontrolled mass immigration forced on us in this country, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, etc., but mainly England. Total uncontrolled mass immigration that people object to. It's not racist. Nobody minds immigration. Nobody minds looking after refugees. But 1/3 people net coming into the country every year, surely you're going to get some kickback. And the other thing that people object to was the constant interference of new laws coming from the EU. Constant. We had enough laws when Blair was in power. There was tons of new laws. I'm probably breaking some sort of law just sitting here in my own house now, but don't even know it. And you're probably the same. They won't discuss it. They won't say these things. And these are the things that are bothering people. But right, what we've got now is people like Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage telling us how they're all going to act in our interests. Between them, they're worth millions. They have no idea how you and I live. Whatever's going on with the people that represent Brexit and the hard Brexit or the no-deal Brexit or whatever else they want to call it, it's not happening because they want to benefit you. They don't give a shit about you. The EU doesn't want Brexit because there are people in other countries in the EU that are thinking exactly the same things as the British people were. They want to vote to come out to the EU as well. There's plenty of them. The EU is nothing but a dictatorial organisation of more political parasites that are looking after themselves. That's all it is. It was a good idea to start with, a common trading bloc, but it's not that anymore. Now, let's have a look at the political parties and the stuff that they're saying. It's all the same stuff. Some people are saying they'll cut taxes. They won't. They won't cut taxes because taxes are not there to pay for public services. They are there to control your income. And as for the parties that say they will increase taxes, don't you ever ask yourself, don't I pay enough tax? The vast majority of us work for half the year to pay tax to the bloody government. How much more money do they need? Put that into context. In 2008, when the banks orchestrated the financial collapse, in the UK alone, the bank bailout, they got 500 billion off us, taxpayers. Don't tell me they haven't got the money to do the things that we want doing. Like off that leaflet. They just push your buttons. More police officers, better schools, look after the NHS. It's never going to happen. None of them will do anything they say. They have no idea how you live. Here's some basic numbers. Just from firking about on the internet, average wage in the UK, full and part-time, this includes, is £29,000 a year. The average full-time wage is supposedly £35,000 a year, and the average part-time wage is £12,000 a year. I haven't earned that in a year in the last 25 years. And part of that time I was with the fire service and the police. In context, an MP's wage has just gone up to £79,000 a year. That's excluding expenses, subsidies and other jobs that they miraculously are allowed to do despite the fact that they're supposed to be representing you and I, no matter what their political colour. That's £79,000 a year. £6,000 a month. It's twice what the maximum full-time wages that everybody else is earning. And the funny thing is, it's absolutely ludicrous that you vote for these people, you then pay this wage to them, and the first thing they do to get their seat in the House of Commons is swear allegiance to the Queen and all of the monarchy that drips off her. They have no allegiance to you. None of them will do anything. If they do, it's to benefit them and their friends. Any decent policies that you'd be enthusiastic about won't be allowed to happen. I'll explain a few things to you. First of all, if you want to stand as an MP, or if you want to stand as a police and crime commissioner, or as if you want to stand as a mayor. If you want to stand as an MP, you've got to find £500 deposit. If you want to stand as a police and crime commissioner, you've got to find £5,000 deposit. If you want to stand as a mayor, you've got to find a £10,000 deposit. If you don't get, as an independent candidate, 5% or more of that vote, you lose that deposit. Now, can you afford to do that as an independent Joe Blogs? You can't, can you? Who do you think pays these deposits? The parties pay these deposits because they can afford to lose them. I bet even the rank and file members of the Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, Greens, etc., I bet they don't even know that their money is being used to pay deposits for candidates. Now, the interesting thing here is the turnouts. At a normal general election, it's about 50 to 60%. Police and Crime Commissioner, that was about 25%. Mayor, about 30% turnout. Yet if you're in a union, the Trade Union Act says that you have to have a 50% turnout to take industrial action. So why are these people being allowed to govern us on turnouts that wouldn't enable a union to take industrial action? It's complete rubbish. What I propose, I've got 10 points here, because that's always good form to have 10 points. What I would do, just suggestion, leave your comments. Number one, I would cut MPs' pay to £35,000 a year. That's the maximum average, as I said earlier, 35k full-time wage, average. I wouldn't allow any expenses or subsidies. I'd make them work 2 weeks work experience every year. They'd get a pension at 55 years of age or 30 years service. I would abolish the monarchy, abolish the House of Lords, install a system of proportional representation, and the removal of deposits for standing in all elections unless the actual candidate is prepared to pay it themselves and prove that they've paid it themselves. And the election would have to have minimum turnout of 70%. And lastly, I would have a none of the above box on the election paper. So you could go in and have your dissatisfaction with all the candidates recorded if you wanted it. None of the above. If you think it'll make a difference, go out and vote for a candidate at this coming general election. But it won't. Your vote is there to give you the impression that you've got a say, and you haven't. The only thing transparent, locally, nationally and internationally, is the corruption, especially in the Western world, with the political process. So what I would do, what I am going to do, is I am going to attend a polling station and I am going to write none of the above on the ballot paper. It does count, because if you spoil the ballot paper, they have to count it as spoiled. And the more of us that go in and take the opportunity to write none of the above on there, the better. Now, on November the 12th, go to a polling station, even if you don't normally vote, and vote N.O.B, none of the above. There's enough knobs out there to vote for, so if you write that on the ballot paper, you're bound to get one of them. Goodbye, and whatever Spock does.